Hi everyone, this is going to be your questions on 91 Part A for Algebra 2B. I'm going to go through the questions that people have asked in the comment section of the YouTube channel. So I will go through those questions right now. We're going to start with number 4 on lesson 91. So on number 4 on lesson 91, the problem reads like this. The large plane could travel 3,000 miles in 1 hour more than it took the small plane to cover 800 miles. If the rate of the large plane was 3 times the rate of the small plane, find the rates and times of both. So it's first saying that the large plane was traveling 3,000 miles. So the distance of the large plane is going to be 3,000. Then it says that the small plane could cover 800 miles. So the distance of the small plane is going to be equal to 800. Then it talks about the rate. It says, or the time. So it says the large plane could travel in 1 hour more than it took the small plane. So the time of the large plane is 1 hour more than the time of the small plane. And then it talks about the rate. It says the rate of the large plane, so RL, was 3 times the rate of the small plane. So 3 times the rate of the small plane. So now what we're going to do is we know our formula for distance. Our formula for distance is rate times time. So I'm going to change both of these equations here. Instead of distance is equal to rate times time is equal to. So it would be RLTL equals 3,000 and RSTS is equal to 800. Now what you need to recognize here is that we have an equation that's set equal to TL and RL, which is plugging into this equation right here. And that's exactly what we want. We want it to plug into the same equation. So if RL is equal to 3RS, TL is equal to TS plus 1 is equal to 3,000. Now you're going to distribute your 3RS, and when you do that, you would get 3RSTS plus 3RS equals 3,000. And at this point, you need to recognize that RSTS will just be the distance of the small plane, which we know in our top right is equal to 800. So that would be 3 times 800 plus 3RS equals 3,000. Now, when you plug that into your calculator, you're going to get 2,400. So I'm going to move that to the other side. And then we're going to have 3RS is equal to 600. So therefore, the rate of the small plane is equal to 200. Now I still need to find the rate of the large plane. I still need to find the time of the small plane and all that other information. So what I'm going to do with my RS now is I'm going to plug it into this equation right here. That would be 200 TS is equal to 800. So therefore, after dividing by 200, the time of the small plane is going to be equal to 4. Then, now that I have RS and TS, I can solve for TL and I can solve for RL. So TL is equal to TS, which is 4 plus 1. So therefore, the time of the large plane is equal to 5. Then for my RL, I know that the rate of the large plane is going to be equal to 3 times the rate of the small plane. So therefore, the rate of the large plane is going to be equal to 600. And that is how you solve number 4. Now moving on, we're going to look at number 5. So number 5, we have the number that were glabrous varied inversely as the amount of as the average age of those present. Okay, so we have two formulas that we could look at. We have A1 over A2 is equal to B1 over B2. That would be varied directly. But this one says varied inversely, which means that this second fraction is actually going to flip. So I have the number that were glabrous. So instead of A1, I'm going to use G1 over G2. And it varied inversely based off of the average age of those present, so the age. So instead of having A1 in the top, I'm going to have A2 over A1, because this is age 2 over age 1. So our first set of numbers for G1 would be 35 or glabrous, then the average age was 70. So that means that my G1 is 35, and that my A1 is going to be equal to 70. Then it says how many were glabrous, so I'm trying to find G2 when the average age was only 50, so A2 would be 50. Now what we're going to do is we're going to solve by cross multiplication. So we have 50 times x is equal to 35 times 70, and we're going to divide both sides by 50. And we can do this all in our calculator. So that would be 35 times 70, and then divide that by 50. That means that x is going to be equal to 49, which means that 49 were glabrous. And that would be your answer. Okay, so that's number 4 and 5. Those are your 2 word problems. Now we're going to look at number 6 and 7. These are your new problems. So number 6, I'm going to write out my 2 equations. So I have y is greater than or equal to negative x minus 1, and I have y is less than 1/3 x plus 1. Now before I graph these, what I want to do is I see that y is greater than or equal to. So greater than means that we're going to shade everything above. Then I see that y is less than, so that means I'm going to shade everything below this line. So greater than means above, less than means below. Now, if there's an equal sign under it, remember this is going to be a solid line. If there's no equal sign, it's going to be a dotted line. Those are the 2 things you need to know. Now I'm going to graph this. I'm going to come over here, make a graph. So 1, 2, 3, 4 up, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 down. Mine's going to be a 4x4 graph. So now it says -1. This is where it's crossing the y-axis. So at -1, I'm going to put a point. Then the slope is -1 over 1, which means from that point you're going to go down 1 over 1, or you could go up 1 to the left 1. It doesn't matter which one you do. And this is going to give you a slope here. So if you want to use a straight edge, you can, if you have one. This one's going to be a solid line because we said that it's greater than or equal to. And then we're going to graph our next one. This one's at +1, and the slope is 1 over 3. So that means up 1 over 1, 2, 3. You could also go down 1 and to the left 3. It's another way of doing it. And then this one's going to be a dotted line connecting these points, so it should look something like this. And now we're going to shade our region. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, it says y is greater than, so I know that this line, this solid line, I'm going to shade everything above it. So I'm going to shade everything above this line. Then for my second one, I'm going to shade everything below the dotted line. So everything below the dotted line would be all of this region. But your answer is going to be all the places that are shaded by both. So notice that in this section right here, I have my horizontal lines as well as my vertical lines. So therefore my answer is really this section right here. So you just need to show me which section satisfies your equation, and for this one it would just be here. It would be below the dotted line and then above the solid line. And that's how you do number 6. Now number 7 is going to follow pretty similarly. We have two equations. We have y is greater than x minus 1, and then we have y is less than or equal to x plus 2. So before I actually graph, I want to see that this is greater than. So that means it's everything above the line. I'm going to shade everything above the line. Then when it says y is less than, that's going to be everything underneath. Now again, if there's no equal sign, it's going to be a dotted line. If there is an equal sign, it will be a solid line. So that's how I can tell the difference between these two equations, or these two lines. So now I'm going to make my diagram over here. So another 4x4 diagram should be enough. Okay, so first I have -1. This is where it's crossing the y-axis. So I'm going to plot that point. My slope is +1 over +1, which means up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. You could have also gone down 1 to the left 1. That's also the same thing. And don't forget that this one is a dotted slope. So it should look like this. Then our second one crosses the y-axis at +2. And this slope is also +1 over +1. So up 1 over 1, and then up 1 over 1. Or down 1 to the left 1, that also works. But this one's going to be a solid line. And that should be your second line. So now I'm going to go through with my shading. Now shading is going to be, for my dotted line, it's everything above that line. So every value above that line would be everything up here. So I'm going to just shade this portion above the dotted line. Then it says everything below my solid line. So that would be everything below it. And your answer, again, is that the area that's covered by both. And in this case, that area would be that area between the two lines. This would be your answer. So you not only have to graph your line, you're also going to have to shade your answer. And this section right here was covered by both the vertical and the horizontal lines. So therefore this portion is my answer. And that's number 7. Next, we're going to look at number 8. So number 8 is one of our newer problems that we have to eliminate a variable. So x plus 2y minus z equals 1. Then we have 2x minus y plus 2z equals 9. And we have x minus 2y minus 3z equals -9. Now, what I'm going to start by doing is I want to add the top two equations together. And I have to eliminate one of the letters. And I'm just going to choose to eliminate x because, well, it's the furthest to the left, so that's why I'm eliminating x. You could really eliminate either of the letters that you choose. I'm going to eliminate x, which means that if I look at this middle equation, the coefficient of x is 2. which means I need this top one to be -2. So I'm going to multiply the top equation by -2, giving me an equation of -2x minus 4y plus 2z is equal to -2. The middle equation is going to stay exactly the same at 2x minus y plus 2z is equal to 9. Now, when I add those two equations together, remember that I'm eliminating a letter, so I'm eliminating x. But everything else I have to add together. So that would be -5y plus 4z is equal to 7. Now I'm going to add my bottom two equations, doing exactly the same thing. I want to also eliminate x. So again, because this coefficient is 1 and this was 2, I'm going to multiply the bottom equation by -2, but my middle equation stays the same at 2x minus y plus 2z equals 9. The middle or bottom equation would turn into -2x plus 4y plus 6z is equal to 18. So when you're doing this, again, you're adding the equations together, so the x's would eliminate. -y plus 4y would give us positive 3y. 2z plus 6z would give us 8z. And that is going to be equal to 27. But now I look at these two equations that I'm left with. You could do substitution or elimination at this point, but because there's numbers attached to, there's coefficients of both the y and the z, I would probably do elimination. Now, if I look at the coefficient for the y, it's 3 and -5, so I'd have to multiply both of those equations in order to do elimination. But if I look at my z, I have a 4z and an 8z. So all I would need to do is multiply this one by -2 in order to eliminate the z. So when I multiply that by -2, this would give me positive 10y minus 8z is equal to -14. And we're adding that to 3y plus 8z is equal to 27. So the z's are going to cancel. When you add the y's together, you're going to get 13y is equal to 27 minus 14, which is also 13. So now you know that y is going to be equal to 1. Now that you know what y is equal to, you have to solve for z. So you can take that y and you can plug it into either this equation here or into this equation here. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to look at this one right here. So it would be 3 times 1 plus 8z is equal to 27. You'll move the 3 to the other side, which will give you 8z is equal to 24. Now, when you divide both sides by 8, that means that z is going to be equal to positive 3. But you're not done because you still need to solve your equation for x. And you can do that by plugging these values into any of these three equations. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to plug it into the top one. So I have x plus 2 times y, and y is equal to 1, minus z, which is equal to 3, equals 1. Now, 2 times 1 is just going to be 2. So if I add 2 and -3, that's going to be -1. And then to get x by itself, you're going to add the 1 to the other side. Therefore, x is equal to 2, and your answers would be 2, 1, and 3. And that's number 8. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is number 9. So number 9, we have our inequalities. So we have 4 is less than x plus 4, which is less than 6, and the domain is going to be integers. So the first thing we're going to determine is that integers is not the dot with the arrow, it's actually going to be the dots. And then what we're going to do is we're going to separate these inequalities. So I'm going to have 4 is less than x plus 4. And then I'm going to have x plus 4 is less than 6. So I have two inequalities separating them out. The left one over here, and then the right one over here. So I have two separate. Now I'm going to solve for x by moving the 4, so subtract 4. So it says x is greater than 0. And what I want to do is I want to flip this so that the x is on the left side. This just flips everything so that the alligator's mouth is still going to open up to the x and the 0 will be over here. Now I'm going to move the 4 to the other side by subtracting it. So I have x is less than 2. So I'm going to draw my number line, -2, -1 and 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now it says on 0, it says it's strictly greater than, so I'm not going to have a dot filled in on 0. X is strictly less than 2, so I'm also not going to have a dot filled in on 2. But it's less than 2 and greater than 0. So if I draw those arrows inside the alligator's mouth, notice that they're pointing towards each other. They're pointing towards each other. So therefore, I'm filling in all the spaces between these two dots, which means your only point is going to be on 1. Okay, moving on, we're going to look at number 10. So if x plus 2 is not less than or equal to 5, and x plus 5 is less than 6, our domain is reals. So as a review, integers are the points on the number line. Reals is going to be a dot with an arrow. But we need to start by dealing with our two inequalities. So the first thing that I'm going to look at is here. It is not less than or equal to 5. So remember that when you have the slash through it, you not only have to reverse our inequality, so flip it from here to here. Since there's an equal sign, we're going to take that away. So this is going to become x plus 2 is greater than 5. So flip the inequality, plus take away the equal sign. Now I'm going to move the 2 to the other side. So I have x is greater than 3. Then for this one, I'm going to move the 5 to the other side, subtracting 5. So that means x is less than 1. So now I'm going to draw my number line. I have -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Here's my number line. My dot on 1, it says x is going to be less than 1. So that means on 1, I'm going to have an open circle. It says x is greater than 3, which means that I'm going to have an open circle on 3 as well. But notice that it says x is less than 1, and the arrow points this way, to the left. So I'm going to fill in all the spots to the left of that point, and this is what it should look like. Then for my 3, it says x is greater than 3, and the arrow points to the right, so that means I'm going to fill in all the spaces to the right, and your arrow should look like this. So it's all the points to the outside of these 2 points that we were given. Okay. And then the last one that we're going to work on is going to be number 12. Number 12. So on number 12, we have x squared plus y squared is equal to 12. And then we have x plus y is equal to 4. So the first thing that we're going to do on this one is we're going to solve our equation for either x or y. It doesn't matter which one you decide to do. I'm going to choose to solve my equation for y in this equation. So if I get y by itself, that means I need to move the x to the other side, and that would become 4 minus x. That means I'm going to take this y and I'm going to plug it into this equation here. That would give me x squared plus 4 minus x squared equals 12. Now don't forget, when you have this 4 minus x squared, you actually need to multiply that out fully, and that would become 4 minus x times 4 minus x equals 12. So when you multiply this out, this still stays x squared. Then I have 4 times 4, which gives me 16. I have 4 times negative x, which would be negative 4x. Negative x times 4, which would be negative 4x. And I have negative x times negative x, which would be plus x squared. I'm also going to bring the 12 over to the left-hand side, because in order to solve, I'm going to have to do quadratic formula or completing the square. So now I'm going to add my like terms. I have x squared and x squared, negative 4x and negative 4x, and then I have 16 and negative 12. So x squared plus x squared is going to give us 2x squared. Negative 4x and negative 4x is going to be negative 8x. And 16 minus 12 is going to give us plus 4 is equal to 0. Now, if I look at this equation, all three of these terms are actually divisible by 2. So I'm actually going to simplify this by multiplying this whole thing by 1/2. That will make this equation x squared minus 4x plus 2 is equal to 0. And that makes doing quadratic formula a little bit easier, because now my coefficient of x squared is 1. So this is going to be my a, this will be my b, and that will be my c. So now when you do quadratic formula, remember the formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now I'm going to plug in my values. So I have negative 4 plus or minus the square root should be negative 4 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 2, all over 2 times a, which would be 2 times 1. Now when I distribute this negative sign, negative times negative would be a positive 4 over 2 times 1, which is 2. Plus or minus, inside my square root, 4 squared is 16, minus 4 times 2, which is 8, all over 2. I can simplify 4 over 2, which would just be 2. 16 minus 8 would be the square root of 8. And I know that the square root of 8 is simply 2 over the square root of 2 divided by 2. And then those 2's would cancel. So I am left with 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. And that's going to be my answer for what x is equal to. Now I need to solve for y. So that means I have to take this and go back to the beginning and solve for what y is equal to. So y is equal to 4 minus 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. Now, if I distribute this minus sign, this 2 is going to become negative. My plus or minus is still going to stay plus or minus, because obviously a plus changing to a minus would change to a plus. It stays the same. So I see that I have a 4 and a negative 2 that I can actually combine. So my answer would turn into 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. And that concludes your questions that you have on problem set 91A. In the comment section of this video, you are going to list your questions for 91B, numbers 16 through 30. These questions will need to be posted by 9 a.m. on Monday morning in order for me to make the video for this for Monday. So again, 91B questions will be posted below this video, and they will need to be put in the comments by 9 a.m. on Monday morning. I hope you guys all have a great weekend, and don't forget to submit your lesson to my email. Have a great weekend.